Hey, and welcome back to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. Everybody say hi.
Hello.
Sitting around the table here in deep, dark Gentilly once again is Dave Gladow.
Hello.
And Alfredo Narvez.
Hello.
I got it right for the
You
first
got
time
it
ever.
right.
I've known Fredo for how long, and I got his name right.
Yeah, I was looking at it going like, oh, he's going for it.
Spell Swoboda.
Svoboda.
All right, there you go. Grandma's proud. All right. But anyway, that's because you grew up in New Orleans. You knew Ron Swoboda, and he gets everybody close enough to my name. So
Yeah, but it's not the same. It's not pronounced the same.
No. But that's how I pronounce it when I'm on the phone, because if you lead with the S and the V, it just confuses everybody.
I know the feeling.
Anyway, yeah. So, but I digress. So, welcome back. More Star Wars talk, and we are getting closer and closer to Mardi Gras. And first of all, as we were doing our little pre-talk, we didn't talk about this. What do we think about Chewbacca's? Because Chewbacca's was not too long ago. We had the Overlords on our show a couple weeks ago, which was a really good episode, if we do say so ourselves. But what did you think of the parade?
Okay, it was fun. I really had a good time. It was interesting seeing everybody dressed up, and because it's wonderful seeing the little kids dressed up, but then their parents dressed up, and everybody like young people dressed up. That's fun.
The thing that I thought I forgot that every time I go to Chewbacca's, I forget about this, and we didn't mention it on that episode. Was the Wranglers. Like when I'm in the 501st and we have, Wranglers as people to say stay away and back up and everything. All the Wranglers are red shirts from Star Trek.
Which is appropriate because hey, they might die.
So,
but no, the other thing that kind of leaped at the top of my head from Chewbacca's was all the Chewbacca onesies. It was funny seeing that. I
like me?
Yeah.
I was in my Chewbacca onesie.
I think I counted like 4 or 5 by the time.
I know. Imagine my embarrassment.
No. All I kept thinking was that South Park episode where everybody shows up wearing a Chewbacca mask. But it was fun. I thought a lot of the costumes were clever. A lot of the floats were clever. The throws were nice,
I did not know about the Chewbacca bandolier. Because we got this throw that Britt was like, that's like a magnet, but it's got Velcro on the back of it. And we're really confused about it until the next day when our friend Ed had a bandolier and all those little things to add on to the Chewbacca bandolier. That was kind of cool.
That's their signature throw, so to speak. I mean, every little...
So they do the bandolier every year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where have I been?
Here.
Man.
Yeah, they do every year, and they kind of... that's good because, again, the Sacred Dunker Wookiee, it's that's their signature thing. It's the Chewie bandolier. I think I got one of the little Mardi Gras babies, the king cake babies that go inside the king cake with a mini bandolier glued onto it. That was cool.
I'd never seen the pink Wookiee up close. Like, that's impressive.
Yeah, the pink
costume.
Chewbacca, that is really cool.
That's an amazing costume. And
You think they wear it more than once a year?
that'd be dangerous, right?
Well, depending on the weather here. I mean, you got good weather for that parade. If you come out...
I marched in tux last year in my snowtrooper armor, which is, I mean, there's not a lot to that. I mean, you're wearing, just kind of regular old, kind of cotton polyester pants. But then you got, it's a fleece jacket on top. And I think I lost 30 pounds.
Just sweat.
But yeah, and the t-shirt underneath and the armor is not all that big a deal. But to be in a Wookiee costume in New Orleans, yeah, I mean,
you better hope for some cold weather.
Should have checked the obituaries. They probably have a new pink Chewbacca every year.
Well, that's the other thing. Is you better hope for no rain, because that would ruin that in a heartbeat.
It would.
Yeah, because it looks like it's made out of wigs, and I can attest. Like our kids have these pink Mardi Gras wigs that have just been through wars. If you can imagine 3 kids, elementary age, those things get super gross super fast.
So when I was in Nebraska at 501st, guys who were also in the Rebel Legion, one had a tarful. He made a tarful costume. I mean, it was the yak hair, the whole business. And then there's another guy who had a Gamorrean guard, but has a Chewbacca, and of course they have to be up on stilts and everything like that, and it's pretty impressive. But yeah, I can't imagine walking through the streets of New Orleans, Ugh.
It was a cool night though, so
that helped. I mean, I'm sure it helped a lot of the people who were pushing all the floats, all the people who were putting, like the big old Star Destroyer.
So do the kids dig Chewbacca's? Did they like it?
Yeah, they liked it a lot. They had a really good time. I think they didn't know going in that it's not with the big floats where they just inundate you with throws. So they were like expecting to get inundated. And so it's like, no, it's not that kind of a parade. It's more of a,
it's kind of like kids who
dressed up.
go to Disney parades and, it's like, Julie's kids were like, why aren't they throwing things? It's like, well, yeah, they don't at these parades.
That's most parades outside of New Orleans, Mardi Gras. They're not really giving out stuff.
In Nebraska, they people would like throw candy from cars and stuff like that, and they outlawed that because somebody might get hurt. So it's like, welcome to New Orleans, where we put big barriers above trees. So and
here we're throwing coconuts and shoes and purses and
cabbages and potatoes.
Actually, that's the more dangerous part. The cabbages. I mean, there's been a number of times where I have to catch it, or the bag of beads. Well, last year it got clipped upside the side of my head.
Yeah, well, I think our first Mardi Gras, we went to Endymion. Sorry, we're going on a big tangent here. But went to Endymion. And we just got done with Tux, and I got out of my Stormtrooper armor and would want to go see Endymion. We're like, but we don't want to. Can we make it all the way up to Kate and Dave's? I think is what we're talking about. Or no, it wasn't up to you guys. It was to Carolyn's. Anyway, so I'm throwing out names like everybody is listening to this podcast knows these people. But anyway, and we're like, we're not going to make it up there. Let's just go watch it on Canal. Mistake. And it's like, rookie mistake. And it was like. So we're sitting there. First of all, the crowds. Second of all, the drunk crowds. Third of all,
the drunk people on the floats.
Britt got beamed with beads across the face. Got a black eye. I got hit on the head, and we both looked at us like, this isn't fun anymore. I want to go home. So we went home.
See, the problem is by the time if you're watching it on Canal downtown, that particular parade, they've been drinking all day long, and they're throwing. I had one friend one time who is also a Star Wars fan. And I shouted his name, and he pointed at me, and his entire side of his float just began to pelt me with stuff. I literally could not catch everything because it was impossible. So I'm just like, whatever people around me grab, feel free. I just grabbed a whole bunch of stuff because they were like competition, see who can hit me the most.
So that fun all starts
Friday,
2 days. So Here we go. And Dave's getting out of town for Mardi Gras. So we'll have an update on that once he gets back. All right. Well, hey, it's time for Star Wars trivia. We need theme song for Star Wars trivia sometime. We need to add that in. But anyway, so we'll go counterclockwise. I don't know why,
but the Price is Right theme just
That's what I was thinking.
Jeopardy would probably be more appropriate, but I don't know.
We're the Cantina band. We'll be playing here. Send up your request. Play the same song. All right, same song. I'm sorry, that's one of my favorites. Go counterclockwise, and I'll ask Fredo. This is coming from the brown category. I don't know what it's SGA, so whatever. Once again, this is from the Trivial Pursuit DVD. Star Wars Saga Edition. I did realize I have the classic trilogy back in the other room, so this at least gets the prequels. All right, so Fredo, who tries to lock down a loose stabilizer during the first Death Star battle?
Okay, we'll give everybody a moment to think about it. I would imagine the only one actually worried about maintenance during the battle, which would have been R2.
Yep.
R2D2?
I was going to say, I'm sorry, you have to say R2D2. We cannot accept just R. All right.
The first question, yeah. Okay, Dave. Who does Qui-Gon admonish? Whenever you gamble, my friend, eventually you'll lose.
And we'll pause for effect. That'd be Watto.
That would be Watto.
That's I think he is one of the just underrated characters from
the
prequels.
Mm-hmm.
I especially liked how they used him in Attack of the Clones. Mm-hmm. That was some of the best acting in that movie, is when he realizes that it's Anakin in front of him. Mm-hmm. And it's from a CGI character. Yes, that might be.
I think I gained more of appreciation for him once we met the Toydarians in Clone Wars. Particularly, King Tachanka? Forget his name now. But anyway, just seeing his people and seeing, okay, he's how he is versus how everybody else is. I was like, oh, okay, so kind of gives him a different personality vibe from everyone of the rest of his Toydarian people.
By the way, going back to our Clone Wars episodes, you guys saw the thing I tagged you in today that on one of the episodes of the Clone Wars that deals with the Ryloths, they're loading the
Ark of the Covenant.
The Ark of the Covenant onto,
That's good stuff.
Yeah, it's fun.
Sense.
Okay.
Dave?
I will also dovetail off of that, and I'll say that I did really like the design of that species a lot, because like he looks like he's full of helium.
Yeah. It looks like a balloon.
Yeah, he's kind of floating around like a balloon.
His wings shouldn't be big enough to be able to lift him off the ground, but they do.
And it's
Star Wars physics.
Yeah, it actually ends up being semi-believable because you think, well, he's full of air or something. Anyway, Aaron, what does Han refer to when he gasps, "It ain't there. It's been totally blown away"?
We'll let people think about this for a second. And I just want to point out that I am wearing a Star Wars shirt and Dave is wearing a Star Wars shirt. And Fredo is wearing
a New Orleans shirt.
New Orleans shirt. So I suppose the Houdat Jedi will let it go. So anyway, that would be Alderaan.
Correct.
Yeah. They get out of hyperspace and it just ain't there. So, well, cool. All right. There's our trivia for today. Hope you had fun playing along. It's just a nice way to get us all warmed up. This episode, we're going to talk about... That's probably enough to get us out of copyright jail. So anyway, little bumper there. Yeah, there's a lot of rumors going around. None of this stuff that we're going to talk about has been like officially confirmed by Lucasfilm. Not really. Mm-hmm. These are all just kind of people being interviewed who are being talked about things and being interviewed and asked questions about some of these rumors. So let's go first of all. We talked about this in an earlier episode. Taika Waititi. He was rumored as being taking on a Star Wars movie. And so Variety, by the way, this article that I'm reading from and referencing is from Fantha Tracks. That's a great website and great bunch of people that handle a lot of Star Wars news and collecting news and things like that. And it's also a nice throwback back to the day when Bantha Tracks was a thing, where you got this newsletter. I think I actually got one way back in the day. So anyway, but Variety caught up with Taika Waititi, who won an Oscar for
Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah, Jojo Rabbit.
I want to say adaptation, screen-to-play adaptation. So yeah.
So anyway, Variety said, just by working on The Mandalorian, you've landed squarely in the future of Star Wars conversation. Where does that stand now? Taika says, I wish there was a better story. I'll put it this way. Are there discussions about Star Wars film? Yeah, I discussed with my friends in 1996 how cool Star Wars was. And that's what they're going off. Variety, really? There's nothing happening? Taika says, I think people see me hanging out with people, especially with Star Wars, and think I'm having some big discussions about it. I would effing love to. Variety, you would want to do a Star Wars movie? Taika said, if it was right, I would want to do any kind of movie if it made sense and if I felt like it wasn't career suicide. Here endeth the article from Fantha Tracks, and I'm thinking of the line from All the President's Men. That's a non-denial denial.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, you got to remember, right now he's committed to making the 4th Thor movie, Thor: Love and Thunder. So that's not scheduled for release until November of next year. So he's got to shepherd that project all the way through to its end. And I imagine that they may not have been talking officially because he's still locked into doing that project for a different Disney arm, Marvel, as opposed to Lucasfilm. But at the same time, he's still... I wouldn't be surprised if he popped up directing another episode of The Mandalorian sometime this season, if he gets a chance, because that might give him a chance to kind of still be around.
And I hope somehow IG-11 is back in.
He's a droid. He can rebuild.
It's brought back to life. So you guys are more of the Marvel nerd heads here than me. And
have you seen Ragnarok?
I have not.
Okay.
So see that there should be a separate podcast of crap that Aaron hasn't seen. And
we'll get there.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. Plenty of time.
But let me ask you this: because a lot of people are like, when this rumor came out of Taika Waititi taking on a Star Wars movie, everyone was like, yeah. Why would that make a good Star Wars movie?
His batting average is 1,000, and making good content.
Well, so is Martin Scorsese, but would that make it a good Star Wars? Would that make you as excited as Taika Waititi?
I would probably be very nearly as excited, yes.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. That'll be interesting to see.
Last Temptation of Yoda? Is that?
No. Imagine
Goodfellas. Didn't he did Last Temptation of Christ, right? Okay, I was just making sure I got a good reference there.
But just imagine a Goodfellas, in Star Wars with the Hutts and the bounty hunters. But Joe Pesci as a bounty hunter.
So anyway, but why should we be excited about Taika Waititi as taking on a movie?
If you're looking for two solid concrete examples, I would say look at what he did with The Mandalorian. We don't know how much of that was his creative direction and how much of that was Favreau and Filoni and company, but that he directed what a lot of people consider the best episode, which was the final episode. I would also say that Thor Ragnarok is very spacey.
It is.
There are a lot of space elements, cosmic elements involved in that story. I think a lot of the humor would translate well. Some people may not feel that way, but Star Wars has never really shied away from humor per se. So
do you think I actually made this argument when Gareth Edwards was first interviewed, with Rogue One, and it really struck me, and I kind of got the same thing with Rian Johnson. J.J. Abrams just seemed a little bit too corporate, but it was like how geeked out they were, right. how geeked out they were that they were doing Star Wars, and so I wonder, do you think the fact that now we're starting to get directors who were fans of not just the prequels, but I mean of the original trilogy, people like close of our age that are like now film directors, do you think that's going to be good for Star Wars?
It's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, you gotta imagine that these are all creators who poured, from whether kids or teens or whatever, countless hours just imagining what kind of Star Wars project they would do. But that could also be kind of putting a lot of pressure on yourself, because, oh my God, I finally get a chance to make my Star Wars movie, and what if I screw it up? And
I mean, it was the same with Jon Favreau as well.
Right.
I mean, he was talked about like playing with his toys,
Right.
And when we talk about one of these other articles here in a little bit, are some of the older filmmakers getting a little bit too out of touch with what Star Wars is?
I don't know, but I mean, Ron Howard did a really fine job, I thought.
Yeah, but he didn't take that from the ground.
Right. He was brought in to rescue it.
The team was running. It was like, So, but anyway.
But I'll say this: I don't think it should be a prerequisite to be a fan of the material to begin with, because the guy they brought in, I'm spacing on the name, the director they brought in after the original director for Rogue One, was it Gilroy?
Tony Gilroy?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have any interest in the material at all. They just brought him in to save it, as I understand it, due to the interviews that he's given after the fact. And he did a phenomenal job with it because he understood the material. And I think like that's what people worry about coming in.
So you like Taika for his just from his creative standpoint. Doesn't matter that he's already.
There's two things about Taika that I really like. One, that he has a very creative voice, and that he can create character in particular that really is interesting on screen to see like what are these people doing, and I want to know more about them. The other thing that I like about him is that there are a lot of underlying messages in his movies. Like sometimes it's not as subtle as you might think, but there's Thor Ragnarok is like this comic booky movie, right? But it deals with colonialism. And it talks about these really deep issues, and it like belies, like you see an interview with Taika and he's like this silly guy who's poking fun throughout the whole interview, and you think, oh, this guy doesn't take anything seriously. No, that's the opposite of what he's doing with his films. So he's an exciting person to think about being attached to a Star Wars film for me.
Yeah, like I was just thinking like something like Jojo Rabbit, which it's a comedy showing you the absurdities and the horrors of the Second World War in Germany. And he's finding a way to give it both an innocent voice and a very serious, mature voice, because he's dealing with children growing up under the Hitler Youth. And you think, where would somebody find the comedy, the humor in that? And he's able to find it in such a way that...
That's not Mel Brooks. Yeah,
exactly. But that's not just playing it for satire.
Right.
Because that's the other aspect is he's very... human. He values his characters as not just as creations but as people. So whether it's somebody who's supposed to play the good guy or the bad guy, or somebody who's playing a villain, he recognizes, okay, I gotta get you to at least understand where they're coming from, even if later on you're gonna be like, yeah, but you're still the villain in the story. Somebody like Hela from Thor Ragnarok, who's coming at you from this is the world we grew up in and this is what I believed in. And then my dad turned around and locked me away and said I was wrong. And what would that person like that be like the moment they get free? So I think he's one of those creators that has a particular voice, like Dave said, and it would be interesting, exciting. We've seen what he can do within Star Wars in The Mandalorian. So giving him a movie, and as you said, it doesn't have to be a trilogy. It can just be one movie. Just tell them, go make your Star Wars movie. Tell us whatever story you want to do, and be happy with it.
I tend to think you're right. I think there's some validity to the report, other than just people saw them having lunch or whatever, because that's a leap. That is a huge leap, because he's involved in this universe already.
Yeah.
Why would you not assume that he's just doing Mandalorian stuff?
People have talked also about Favreau, doing a Star Wars movie,
right?
Or even Filoni, so I'm going to spring an audible on you guys, because this came, Bob Iger had his, quarterly, we made a buku amount of money, call, and he talked about spin-off series from The Mandalorian.
Right.
I mean, that's all he said, but right away in my head, I just went straight to a Cara Dune show, and I think that would be awesome. I really like Gina Carano in that. I really like that character. It was one of the few characters in The Mandalorian that I was like, I want to know more about that character. I mean, for the most part, the rest of them either was fleshed out, either The Mandalorian was kind of fleshed out, or they were just like, oh, that's kind of a neat little side character. Even I really don't even care where Baby Yoda came from. It's just a neat character. You know what I mean? It's just a neat character. But her, her story, I really dug that. And I think there's some cool bridging the gap between Jedi and The Mandalorian that could be done. Or even actually that happened in the original trilogy time frame.
Letting us see some of the Rebel Alliance, the underpinnings, because... Or
even and the messiness of the transition from the Empire to the New Republic. I think it'd be kind of a cool series. I don't know.
And as you said, it would be interesting, and it makes sense. It's they already are in universe. They already have Gina Carano in, so it wouldn't take that much of a leap to kind of decide, okay, we want to tell her story and have her show us a different side of the galaxy. It gives you an opportunity to create new content, which Disney's after. But
you're witnessing something here, guys, by the way, is that because I used to be of the mindset of, if it ain't in the movies, I really don't give a crud about it. Because it was like all the EU books and everything, I just could not get into. A few of them I got into and I dug, but I just couldn't, because it just felt like
Fanfic.
Yeah, somebody coming to my house say, "Hey, let me tell you the Star Wars story I just made up." And it just kind of annoyed me. I mean, it's like I said, this is confession time for Aaron.
Mhm.
But now when I'm starting to see these characters, I'm like, yeah, I do want to know more about, some of these people. And I think Disney Plus is going to be a great venue for that.
And again, they're not locked into any long-term plans. They can give Cara Dune 1 season, 8 episodes, and okay, we're done. Thank you. It's not mandated that she get a set amount of time or a certain amount of story.
Right.
They can make it as much as they want to.
I think I rankled slightly at his exact comments. I don't remember what they exactly were, but it was along the lines of, we're moving away from films, but we know Mandalorian's a huge success. We're going to give you more Mandalorian, and we're going to do a spinoff series.
He's all about money. He's all about money.
Yeah, and so like,
and especially in that phone call. Yeah, I mean, I understand.
It's a money call.
It's like when I was in a band. It's like, why, yes, sir, we will play Brown Eyed Girl. It's like
You're paying the bills, you get what you want.
Even though you don't, But
all that said, I would not turn down a Cara Dune story. What
other potential spin-offs? Because that was the only one that I really kind of went to. But what other potential spin-offs do you think could there be?
Quill, maybe.
I mean, Moff Gideon. I think there's one there, but I think that might be handled in the Clone Wars.
I love the client. He was intriguing as all
Yeah, true.
More bounty hunters. You're gonna have Bosk come in.
Well, of course, we're putting Bosk in everything.
Exactly. So we have to.
More Bosk.
It's mandated.
That's what the Disney shareholders are crying for. We need more Bosk.
But I was just gonna say, I mean, that was the idea of the Star Wars stories movies. It was gonna be, we're gonna show you a singular movie while we're also making this trilogy. We know that they're not making a trilogy for the next few years, but if they can get Taika Waititi to make one movie here, or they can make Martin Scorsese to make a movie there, they could still get Star Wars movies on the big screen while letting, whether it's Ryan Johnson or Kevin Feige or whoever else is going to be designing the next trilogy, time to set their stuff together. They're not locked in like, oh my gosh, we got to rush product out because we're locked into a day. We can put all this stuff as we're comfortable with it. Same thing with the shows.
I think you and I agree on that too, because we've talked about that, and I think on a previous episode too, where it's like they're in this Marvel mindset right now of everything has to connect. It's one big story. All the canon has to line up perfectly, and it's like, just tell us interesting stories, which is more of the DC model right now.
That's why one of the most enjoyable books that I've read recently was From a Certain Point of View. Because I mean, whether you want to say any of it was canon, whatever, but I mean, it's, it follows that timeline of, A New Hope, but just from here are these little side stories that were going on. It was so enjoyable. It was very enjoyable. And I really get kind of bent out of shape about, is it canon, is it not canon? It's just like, I just want to enjoy, whatever. But I also want it to make sense. I don't want to go to one movie and it's like, or read one book and say, all right, this is happening here, and then another one say, oh yeah, I remember that. No, McClunky, that you don't want to go that way.
That's what the story group's for.
You see that sign that says rib tips? Yeah, no, you don't want to go that way.
Right.
All right. Well, anyway, let's move to our next rumor, and again from Fantha Tracks, and this is about Cassian Andor. And so again, these are very short. So if this is Fantha Tracks, this is not a backhanded compliment. Is great for like early morning, I'm just waking up and I just want to read. I don't want to read the entire New York Times type of news, type of stuff. So anyway, while initially it was understood that Disney Plus Kenobi series would arrive before Rogue One spinoff Cassian Andor series, it looks like the roles have reversed as Kenobi production slides back to 2021, which we talked about in the previous episode, retaining the same release date. It looks like Cassian has been stepped forward. Diego Luna addressed this while discussing season 2 of Netflix show Narcos Mexico. Quote, yes, we are doing it. We are doing it this year. It's happening and I'm getting ready for it. I'm really excited. I can't wait. It's really cool to tell a story where you already know the ending. that's interesting. Yeah, you die. It is a different approach because of the beauty and how things happen. It's not just what happens. It's not the typical way of approaching a story. It's about how things happen, which in fact is the same that happened in Rogue One. How many times does he say happened in this? This is like, was your press clippings written by our president? Anyway, happened in Rogue One. You know the ending, but you don't know how it happened. And we have that challenge in front of us again, which is exciting. On a side note, when I got Alan Tudyk to sign my Rogue One poster was the day after it was announced that K2SO was going to be in the Cassian Andor series. I was really excited about that. So I don't know. What do you think about this? Apparently it's happening because we've, got happened is in there a whole bunch of times. How excited are you for the Cassian Andor series?
He's one of my favorite characters at this point, so definitely excited. Why
is he one of your favorite characters?
The moral ambiguity. He's a complicated guy, and he's coming at it from. And again, I love that fight that he and Jin have in the ship as they're leaving.
Oh, he says, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like you realize, I don't know at what point in that fight you realize that they both are right. He didn't really give life a chance in that moment. He didn't give her father a chance, but he's coming at it from a perspective of we have to win this thing, and I've been in this forever, and you have to get your hands dirty. And
so I wondered about this. It was like, so is this going to be a story about how he becomes, but I suppose he kind of became a rebel at the age of 6. And if K2SO is going to be in it, I mean, I guess I'm assuming that we're going to be in the heart of Star Wars Rebels, A New Hope land.
I would imagine,
or Rogue One land, not New Hope, because he dies before New Hope.
Right, well, yeah, because I imagine we might get something along the lines of kind of like the Mandalorian, where we see his character before we meet him in Rogue One.
Maybe some flashbacks,
kind of like the Mandalorian did. Maybe a bit more, but not too much, because obviously he's a star. I think it's a great idea because, he's right in that we meet the character probably at his lowest. He's feeling very down about the chances of the Alliance, and he's just trudging along. He's just committing whatever he's got to do to keep the fight going. And you get a sense that there was once hope and optimism in him about the cause that he was fighting for, and that it slowly got drained away from him as he was forced to make more and more gray moral choices.
And then Jin rekindles that in him.
Exactly.
And it's really uplifting to see that moment where he comes to her and it's like, I believe in you.
Right.
And we're going to do this thing.
So getting to see all of that, but also getting to see that side of the Empire, which, because of in the original trilogy, we didn't really get to see too much of it. We didn't get to see how oppressive they were, how overbearing they were. Rogue One really got us a good view of it, and Rebels did as well.
Solo gave us a glimpse of it.
So kind of giving us more and more of a sense of what the life under the Empire is and why people would like Cassian would turn to the Alliance.
One, I'm very surprised. I was very surprised that we didn't see any of Cassian in Star Wars Rebels in that last season. I think it would have made sense. It would have kind of linked some things. But anyway,
him and Ahsoka.
from on a different point, however, the thing that's interesting to me about this article, like I said, the last one with Taika, it was like a non-denial denial. When's the last time that you heard anybody say anything about the Cassian Andor series? It's been a long time, yeah. Right? And to me, this almost signals Disney's panic over Kenobi. And, it's like, oh, crud. And then it's like, okay, what do we... Oh, Cassian, you're up. It's like the Happy Days episode where they put Ralph Mouth into the basketball game. He takes off his sweats and he's wearing his street clothes because he never gets to play, It just seems like, okay, we got all of a sudden we're going to... Hopefully this doesn't suffer that it's a hurry up type of a thing. That's the cynic in me. That is seeing this like all of a sudden, because you haven't heard anything about production on Cassian Andor. I don't know.
Because you got to figure, okay, if you're looking at it from Disney designs, their plan was Mandalorian kicks off Disney Plus, and come February we get Clone Wars.
You know what was supposed to happen in between that?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, end of January, you know what we were supposed to get?
What?
We were supposed to know what the next trilogy was going to be and who was going to be directing it.
So that didn't happen.
That didn't happen.
Right. So they're having to kick projects down the road.
And they were waiting to see how well Rise of Skywalker did. And they made a whole bunch of money, so they got to be happy about that. But anyway, keep going.
But I'm saying, so you got to figure they already have their project for the start of the year, which is Clone Wars, final season of Clone Wars, and they know their plan for the fall is Mandalorian season 2. So they probably need a project to come in a year from now, which more than likely would have been Obi-Wan. Because they start filming, the scripts are locked in. They start filming sometime around this time, production value time, and then special effects, music.
Yeah, Mandalorian has taken about a year,
right,
from shooting to
release.
Yeah.
So you figure, okay, they're probably thinking Obi-Wan was going to be the project that was going to take Clone Wars spot next year at this time.
Yeah.
Well, now that it's not there, rather than it's gotten kicked down the road for whenever they sort it out, it's a lot better to see if you can get the Cassian Andor project in, because you already got casting, you already got some pre-production done, so it's a lot easier to move that up than necessarily delay and be without any new Star Wars property come spring 2021, because at that point they're gonna be like, we're gonna re-release the movies. So
Fredo, how excited are you for Cassian Andor series?
I am. I'm very excited. I love Diego Luna's take on the role. I loved. Rogue One was one of my favorite movies that have come out in the last decade. It'll be interesting to see what kind of characterization he gives to this role at this point, because it's before we meet him. Like I said, in Rogue One. It's going to be interesting to see, because they're going to show us how he and K2 met. That's going to be an interesting dynamic. And just getting to see those elements of the Rebel Alliance and how he maneuvered his way through the Empire. Again, it's a different side of Star Wars. One of the beauties of all these projects is they're giving us different slices of the same big universe.
And I think the interesting thing, too, about what's happening, seemingly happening in the Disney Plus series that are being released, is that it's safe territory.
Mm-hmm.
Again, for old farts like us,
OT.
it's like, okay, Cassian Andor, sure, but it's happening in that time frame that right up close to Rogue One and the OT. I'm good. Mandalorian is that way too. He looks like Boba Fett. All right, there was a lot of stuff we talked about just making people feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Kenobi, I'm still skeptical about the story, but but it's going to be, I think what's going to be interesting is when Star Wars finally takes the leap and starts a new story based around people and things that we have never seen. There's always probably going to be the Force. There's probably always going to be Jedi, but you're not going to see a Garandon playing a clarinet. You're not going to see, Bosk. You're not going to see Baby Yoda. It's going to be, here's totally new people, and that will be a daring thing for them to do.
I look forward to that, but I also look forward to.
Do you look forward to it though with a little trepidation?
Well,
are you a bit nervous because we haven't gotten really anything truly original?
I think there's a step between what we're doing now and that, which is let's focus in on characters that aren't original trilogy focused. So, Ahsoka. Are we going to get an Ahsoka series?
Yes. Okay, but I'm gonna throw in a beer fest reference here. When when Landfill dies and all of a sudden Landfill's brother shows up and it's Landfill. Yeah, sure. It's not Boba Fett, but he looks a lot like Boba Fett. It's Ahsoka, which is different, but we've already seen. Yeah.
I do still think that's a leap though, because like you said, you're making old farts happy. And like the three people in this room would love to see an Ahsoka.
By the way, you're going to McClunky that? Just wondering.
I don't know. Fart? Probably not. Yeah.
I mean, it is one of the 7 naughty words, but it really is. But
Sorry.
I don't. Yeah, I've lost track. You know what goes through on network television nowadays. I can't even know. But she's not a character that appeals to our generation originally. So it's like, again, it's a leap of looking forward and like catering to a different audience. And so for me anyway, like when I look at that, I was like, I'm waiting for that. Like we haven't even done that yet. And so like baby steps. Let's get that going too.
I mean, yeah, it's leading them gently to, you don't want to push them off the cliff, but I'm just saying that even Rise of Skywalker had a battle droid in it. There were callbacks to the prequel trilogy. So everybody, whether it's the young kids who grew up with the prequel trilogy or the old people like us who grew up with the OT, there was something to make everybody happy. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying when they take that step to make one thing that nobody recognizes, and maybe there's only one common thread where it's like, all right, like I said, I see a lightsaber or I see Jedi, but nobody talks about, anything that's been previous. That's going to be interesting.
That's what and I wonder maybe if that's sort of the project that they gave to Rian Johnson, or that they were thinking of putting together under Kevin Feige, because you have to think about that. You have to think 3 steps ahead, because you can't just simply leap without knowing. That's why, for example, when you look at it this way, Mandalorian introduced elements that existed only in an animated kids show, and now it's brought them onto live TV, so to speak. Stuff like the Darksaber and Death Watch.
We might be developing a future episode here, because it is one of those things too, where it also, if you do something totally new, you might be just close enough. Because like I said, I've said the movie I want to see is the one where it's the origins of the Force, the origins of the Jedi, the origins of the Sith. Right. I think that would be way cool. Mm-hmm. But you start getting too close to things that have already existed, like Knights of the Old Republic, and you're going to have somebody who's played that video game and gone, but what about this person who was in the video game? Why didn't you put him in that movie? And now I'm mad, and here's my pitchfork. It's
look, when Clone Wars called the planet Moraband, and when Rise of Skywalker called it Exegol, the back of my head kept going, it's Korriban! McClunky! And you can McClunky that.
Yeah, we will.
But I have to stretch out the McClunky because he stretched out the other word.
Well, the sequel trilogy's already done this, right? True. I mean, like, you're already, like, all this EU content has just been wiped clean. And I know a lot of people were upset with the way that, in particular, Ben Solo was handled. It's like, well, why not make him an existing character that already exists in the lore?
Like Jason Solo.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people are upset over that. But those movies still made $1 billion each. So it's like, at the end of the day, they're going to do what they think is going to make them money. So, but interesting offshoot from this, do we think there will be rebels in this Cassian show because the time frame
was he bumping into Rex?
So you're talking about like Star Wars Rebels characters?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that, and I've wondered about that too, even in The Mandalorian, like, would you see Sabine? Would you see Ahsoka? Because they're around, because they're looking for Ezra. I think it'd be tough to make a leap from, it's easier to make a leap from live action to animated.
Right.
Than it is for an animated character to be brought into live action.
Particularly when it doesn't sound the same?
Well, they could make it so they could sound the same. I mean, there's things that you could do. Like, even if, like, yeah, I mean, you could always have the person could dub it. But I'm just saying that it's like, if I'm worried, for example, if they ever make a live action Ahsoka, would it just look like, I don't know, somebody's cosplaying as Ahsoka? Not to diss anybody's cosplay on Ahsoka, because a lot of people put a lot of time into it, but it never looks exactly like what we know. You know what I mean? So that's, I think it would be cool, but it'd be interesting how they would do it. And again, however, if it's all of a sudden here's Kanan Jarrus and it's not Freddie Prinze Jr.'s voice, then it's kind of like,
it's going to throw you off that first time he speaks.
I don't know.
Because particularly a lot of characters, it's all about the feel, and you've gotten accustomed. I mean, that's one of the things that animation does. It gives you that opportunity to get that sense of that character, because it all comes from the voice. It's the same thing happened with Vader with James Earl Jones' voice. All that power and realness and danger that he presented came from his voice. So all of a sudden, changing it.
And that is something I will say. This when in the special editions of Empire, when Vader says, alert my Star Destroyer, whatever. I mean, it's actually the dude who was in Resistance, and he actually did Vader's voice in some video games. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't sound right, and
it sticks, huh?
And so it is. I mean, I think you got to be careful about that. I think it'd be cool, but then also it's like, do we need it?
Well, what if they throw in somebody like Vader or even Maul?
Interesting. I don't know.
Because you could get Ray Park back.
While we're talking about Cassian Andor, here's the other big one that Dave sent us a couple days ago. Again, rumor. I'm guessing this is a rumor because I mean, if this was the honest to God truth, I think that Lucasfilm would have rolled this out in front of a big parade. And this is I'm reading from the Illuminerdy.com, which is an awesome name for a website. Good job. Fair play. George Lucas returning to Star Wars as executive producer on Cassian Andor series. So, says while the Illuminerdi, I love it, already hinted at the most explosive news about the upcoming Cassian Andor series for Disney Plus, we can now openly confirm that George Lucas is returning to the Star Wars universe as writer and executive producer. So I'm just going to leave it at that. So like I said, I gotta admit I'm a mixed bag on this.
This one, it requires a giant grain of salt because already some reporters have come out and said this is bunk.
So again, we're talking rumor land.
Yeah. So
let's frame the discussion this way. How would you feel if George Lucas was coming back to Star Wars? And how much do you think they pay him?
Well, here's my question: would he do it for money? Because I wonder. I mean, he got paid.
I think because it's been reported how ticked off he is at the route that they went on the sequel trilogy, and probably to stick it to Bob Iger, I think he would make him pay handsomely. Anyway,
right. No, but I was thinking it would be an interesting dynamic because for the first time ever, George Lucas, even though he'd be executive producer and writer, would not have the final say.
Well, here's the other thing. So here's why I'm a mixed bag. I think it'd be way cool. I mean, it's kind of like when, it's fourth quarter and, Shane Falco comes in to, win the game for, the Washington Sentinels, or second half. Sorry. I just made a replacements reference here. Mm-hmm. But, it'd be cool to see him walk in the locker room and say, all right, guys, I'm back, But here's the other thing. George Lucas is an awesome story creator, but he's an awful writer. There would have to be a screenwriter assigned to him. Lawrence Kasdan saved his butt in Empire and Jedi. Because in future episode, we're going to talk about how Star Wars, was almost not that great. And really, one of the things that's not great about Star Wars is the dialogue and just the script. He's a great story creator. He's an awful writer. That's my. It's a dialogue. Maybe awful is too much of a word.
He's always struggled with dialogue, right? And the really famous Harrison Ford quote on that. I won't quote it here because then
you can write this McClunky.
Yeah. You can write this McClunky, but you sure as heck can't say it. And that's been the case since the very beginning. And so that he deserves that critique. He would need help. I mean, he would need help because he can build a world like no one else. This is the reason this exists. All of this
His imagination is incredible.
Including this podcast. I mean, it's because of him. And I would love for him to be attached to anything Star Wars.
Now, which one of you said it? It'd be interesting to see how he handles characters he didn't create. That was you. Mm-hmm. That's great podcasting, moment. I'm pointing to one person here and saying that's you.
Who raised his hand?
It was Fredo. Yeah.
Yeah. No, because it's an interesting point because he didn't create Cassian Andor. He didn't create K2SO. These are creations of somebody else based on the universe he created. I think we also have to recognize that George is an artist in the grandest sense. Like, he can't let go. That's why we have the special editions. That's why whenever it came out on Laserdisc and DVD, he had to go back and retouch something up. I wonder how much, again, he has, like all great artists, he wants to make the thing better than perfect. How would he do working under somebody else's thumb, so to speak? He's always been an independent filmmaker, whether it was THX 1138 or American Graffiti, Star Wars. He's always said, the merchandising arm of Star Wars funded his ability to tell all the studios, I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. And, he got away with it for so long, but now it's not his anymore. And how much of that would he be willing to put himself through?
So getting to what you said, he would need help. Continuing on a little bit with this story, said, but the bigger news about the series might be about who's working behind the camera on the series. Our sources have confirmed that none other than George Lucas is set to join the project as both writer and executive producer. This is a major development for Lucas, who hasn't been directly involved in Star Wars universe for years. This will also be the first time as a writer for the franchise since the release of Revenge of the Sith. Mm-hmm. Also working on the series will be Tony Gilroy, who wrote the screenplay for Rogue One and helped introduce Cassian and K2SO to the franchise in the first place. Mm-hmm. So I guess here's my other question is what do we think? How well would he collaborate with,
with somebody else? And here's the thing. He's shown he's able to work with somebody else because he did with Lawrence Kasdan, Erwin Kirshner, Gary Kurtz, but even Gary Kurtz at some point left.
Yeah, Richard Marquand.
Rest in peace. So he's shown the ability, but there's the thing. He showed that ability when he was a young filmmaker. By the time we get to the prequel trilogy, which was 21 years ago, he's very much the man in charge. I forget the name of the producer for the prequel trilogy, but it was basically George's show. And I'm trying to remember, he was lining up the following project he was going to line up after Revenge of the Sith, the Tuskegee Airmen movie, Red Tails. He had been working on that for 20 years, and he finally just gave it up, executive produced, and somebody else directed. So he hasn't, this is the other thing, is he hasn't really made anything officially as a creator in close to 15 years since Revenge of the Sith. So what's it going to be like going back into the studio, going back into a set, flexing those muscles again when they haven't been used for so long, and they're not going to be flexed in a way in which he was accustomed to, because now this is somebody else's. He has to, Disney may say, oh, we love having you, George. Come on in. By all means, we're glad to have you back, but we can't have you doing this, this, and this.
So I want to clarify too, like Gareth Edwards was the original director of Rogue One, and Tony Gilroy was credited as a writer on Rogue One, though he was the one, I think, who came in and directed all the reshoots and changed the film substantially. So he's not the one who created those characters. He certainly had a good handle on who they were by the end of the creative process there. So
when you first saw this article, again, rumor, so sing Adele in your head. What was your gut reaction, Dave? Were you like, what was like, was it like, yay, or no, or what? What was your gut reaction?
I mixed feelings. I was excited for the series, and I was excited that George was doing something that he obviously feels passionate about, and I thought that it would be good. I mean, I think he would produce good ideas that would make for good cinema. But it felt a little sad that, like he's not able to let it go too.
Well, it's also kind of sad that Disney has had a hard, and Lucasfilm has had a hard time finding it. Again, you have to go back, say, hey, can you come back and play another season, because the quarterback we got ain't cutting it.
Yeah.
They haven't been able to find that person to carry the torch. I think they hope that J.J. Abrams would be it, and
J.J. just gave him a remix the original trilogy.
So I think it's kind of a So how do you think fandom will? Because I have not heard. I have not listened. I haven't been listening to any other podcasts, so I don't. How do you think fandom would react to George Lucas coming back? Do you think it's there'll
be someone before it. They would see it as.
Is this kind of like Brett Favre going to the Vikings?
I wouldn't say it that much, but well, it may. But here's the interesting, because I think some people, particularly people who did not like the sequel trilogy, would look at it as he's coming to save Star Wars from Disney, and then there'd be some people who'd be like, "But did you remember what he last did and the prequels?" And they start quoting the Sand speech about how it's rough and coarse and gets everywhere, So there would be a mixed reaction, I would imagine, until we saw what that collaboration looked like. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, either everybody would get on board, ready to see it, or alarms would start ringing everywhere.
I mean, it makes sense, the collaboration, because if you think about Lucas being a world builder of just tremendous imagination, as we've spoken to, and then you have somebody like Gilroy, who's a fixer, who comes in and makes it work. Mm-hmm. You could see the collaboration working really, really well.
The other interesting thing here is that Lucas is very much into the Force, and this would be a series that would have nothing to do with the Force.
He's very much a child of the '60s.
You would think that the interesting place to put him would be the Obi-Wan series, but to put him in the Cassian series, I mean, if this is true, that's kind of an interesting placement.
But it might also be a question of timing. Maybe they were thinking he could come in for Obi-Wan.
What's he doing except counting his billions of dollars of money?
Well, remember, he donated the majority of the Disney billions away.
I suppose he's like, oh crud, the wing of my new museum needs
needs a new piece.
We need some more stuff here. So Disney, what do you got for me?
No, but I was gonna say,
is he involved in the new Indiana Jones movie? Sorry,
no.
Or is that just Steven Spielberg?
All that was bought lock, stock, and barrel by Disney. And I wonder if there's some hurt feelings because, remember, he gave Disney all his script treatments and ideas for the sequel trilogy.
Indiana Jones was Paramount. Is that owned by Disney now?
It's Lucasfilm.
I know it's Lucasfilm, but is it owned by, because it was...
Paramount was the distributor, not the owner.
Anyway.
Yeah, they may still distribute the new movie. I don't know what the relationship is there, but...
Sorry, I had to cut you off.
Yeah, no. I mean, I go back. With this, I kind of go back to the Obi-Wan getting delayed thing, and it makes me sad because I really want to see that series. But I've seen speculation now that this thing's going to get reworked back into a movie, which is what it was originally. And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that. Would you be more in favor of it as a series or as a movie?
Either way, where it's placed in the timeline, I'm skeptical.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's even one episode or, it, because it still runs. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it, because if you're going to put it in between 3 and 4, then, you run the risk of really doing some damage to that character's nobility that is there in episode 4. Because if he, all right, okay, Luke looks like, it's like if you're watching after your neighbor's dog and then go to the casino for overnight and just like, oh, he'll be fine, he can serve you, I'll leave him some food and water and I'll pick up the poo when I get home.
So just a quick sidebar, Lucas is executive producer on Indiana Jones 5.
All right.
So he's in there with Spielberg and Disney. So maybe that's where the discussions kind of got brought up. Hey, would you mind sliding over? I was saying regarding timing on Obi-Wan, maybe that's where they did thought bring him in, because again, I was saying he's kind of a child of the '60s, so it's always been about the portraying the Force in very New Age terms, very broad, very it can be very humanistic but very universal. But maybe it's a situation where they go and like, look, we kicked Obi-Wan down the road and we don't know what that's gonna be like, but we want you to be working with us still. So we got this next show coming up. Would you step in on it? Sometimes it may just be as simple as Obi-Wan's not ready yet, but we need you now.
To your question, Dave, though, I think Obi-Wan would work better as a movie, just a single movie, than a series.
It was rumored to be very short.
Yeah, I
mean, 6
mean,
episodes. Yeah. I think.
I still, I agree with what I've heard the guys on Star Wars Underworld say. I think the way it works is with flashbacks and things like that. And if you do the flashback route, then a series works. But otherwise, I'm still like going, homeboys hanging out on Tatooine.
And even if you give him one single episode communing with Qui-Gon,
yeah,
learning how to live, that's 1 hour.
So great. He goes and razzles with some, sand people, or, learns to tame a dewback. It's like,
that's 1 episode. So we got 2.
So that's why I'm saying that it's like, I'm anxious to be proven wrong on all this, but that's just my skepticism of it. It's kind of like, I don't know.
One thing I would add on George Lucas, the thought that has occurred to me is that he might want back in now because the technology is there to do a TV series. And that was something that he had struggled with for a decade plus, I think, trying to get the Underworld series off the ground and all those scripts that he had commissioned and written. And it just seemed like the dollars and cents of it never made sense, and so he wasn't able to do it. And now it's working.
So
Mandalorian
and here's the thing, though. I think with him coming back, there's a book that I read. It was ends up being on leadership. It was called Good to Great, and one of the chapters in there was knowing where people sit on the bus. It's like everybody has their seat on the bus that makes the bus move well, and it's like basically it's like know your employees' strengths, or know your team's strengths. What is each person good at, and having the strength to say, you know what, George, you are the visionary of this team. You develop stories better and everything, but with all due respect, you can't write your way out of a paper bag. So we're going to let Dave write, but you got to come up with the story, you work with Dave. And so, you know what I mean? It's like knowing, so somebody at Lucasfilm has to have the strength to say, here's what we want happening. Again, it's kind of like that. Lucas, you come up with the ideas, Kasdan, you write them, and JJ, you film them, and that's going to be tough for people to do, especially when you're talking about the creator with, because visually the prequels, especially 2 and 3 are stunning, but it's just awful direction and awful writing.
I was just thinking, because we're not expecting, to go into Dave's point, we're not expecting the Cassian series to be long running, right? We're expecting to be single season.
I think 1 season. Okay,
and this might be a good way for Disney to try out if they can do that Underworld series, or do whatever Lucas is pitching to them. If they're thinking of a longer term partnership, this might be a project where they can say, okay, we'll give you the reins, we'll see how it works, and then if it doesn't, well, okay, you go, okay, thank you, George, thank you for your time, and you move on. But if it does work and it's shown that it can work, then you can turn around and say, okay, George, that was great. We did a great Cassian Andor show. You said you had an idea for something else, and design that project like the way you described, where he's coming up with the idea for the show. They get somebody to come in and write the script with him, and they'll start lining up that project as a longer running project as opposed to just a single 6 to 8 episode series.
So again, before anybody gets too fired up, everything we talked about tonight are rumors. Nothing is set in stone. Who knows? We might still get the Obi-Wan series first. George Lucas might not have anything to do with anything. Mm-hmm. Taika Waititi might be directing a Star Wars movie, might not, so, but it is kind of fun to those are the fun conversations to have. And again, what does it mean for, Star Wars? So.
Can I do one last thing?
Yeah.
Because we got Valentine's Day coming up. And I think this episode will drop on Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day. What do you guys think is the most romantic moment in Star Wars?
Oh, it's what's on your shirt right now. I mean, the I love you, I know, that was, my gosh, that was one of the best, moments, I think, in Star Wars. That was, mm-hmm. It was, and it wasn't what was written. It was, I love you too.
Right.
And thank you, Harrison Ford, to say, no, that's not what Han Solo would say. So anyway.
To quote Kevin Smith, like a pimp, he went, I know.
Yeah.
It was so good that they had to flip it around for Jedi, where he says, I love you, and she says, I know.
Well, of course, then in Solo,
mm-hmm.
I hate you. I know. Yeah.
Carrie Fisher acted the McClunky out of that scene.
Mm-hmm.
I get emotional watching that scene because you can see her face just crumple.
Yeah.
As he's frozen in carbonite, and it's just Chewie screaming, and yeah, I mean that moment's hard to beat.
Yeah.
Are there any other moments though that come up?
See, that's the thing. I'm trying to think. Unfortunately, the prequels, we're talking about bad writing. I mean, all I can think in the back of my head, it's aggressive negotiations. And I'm just like, let's go back to Naboo.
Well, I will say though, when they were on Naboo and stand there in front of the lake and Anakin's doing the heavy flirting and stuff like that. I mean, that was pretty well played.
Mm-hmm.
The soft, rubbing of her arm, and he's making his move, and it kind of, it took us all back to being 16, 17 years old. It's like, all right, am I gonna be able to get away with this? Okay, yep, all right. I mean, that sounded awful, but I mean, that's the way we all did. Can I hold her hand? Yeah, okay. She didn't pull my hand away. Okay,
And I always thought it made sense that their relationship was a bit awkward because they're both very accomplished people at a very early age. So it makes sense that neither one of them would know necessarily how to maneuver, romantic, emotional relationship at the start. Because it's not like they get taught, okay, in Jedi class, this is how you hit on a girl, or this is how you convince a girl you like her. It's, very strict. And she lived a life that was very strict, very ordered. And all of a sudden, there's all these feelings and emotions. So I get the sense of where he was going. Again, the lines that get it don't do them any favors.
I don't know what this says about Star Wars, but it feels like to me the moments that work the best are the ones that are just laced with tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you talk about the Leia and Han moment with the carbon freezing, but I also feel like the wedding at the end of 2
mm-hmm.
with Across the Stars. Gosh, you're just like, oh man, they're doomed.
Yeah.
They're doomed. And
they signed Dare and the Galaxy's death warrants.
Yeah, and it's terrible, but it works in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, and kind of a funny little tangent here, I still get a kick out of we all have a friend who has a huge crush on Linda Ronstadt. And he also does not give one rat's patut about Star Wars. Never seen a Star Wars movie and everything. And I loved it the other day when I got to say that, yeah, George Lucas dated Linda Ronstadt.
Mm-hmm.
So
got it all together.
It's like you need to come over to our side there, Ryan. So anyway, but is that your scene? The
yeah,
I love you, I know, yeah. But future episode then. Let's identify all the romantic scenes in Star Wars because I don't think there are that many.
They're not.
That'd be a short episode.
So with that, we will say Happy Valentine's Day and
Happy VD Day.
and hope you all have a great Carnival, Mardi Gras, and yeah. So until then, we will say who dat?
Who dat?
Who dat?
McConkey.